Hello, hello. So, hope you all are doing good. And today, I was talking to one of my colleague, and for a project we were talking about Azure Functions. And I remembered that Microsoft did introduce something new about Azure Function with the latest release of Business Central. So I thought, let's play with it. But while I was thinking to play with it, I thought, why not record it so that all of us learn on that. So in today's video, we'll talk about what the capability is. We'll read the documentation. We'll see what's available, and then we'll do a demo where we'll create Azure functions and we'll try to consume that in our Business Central environment. So if you sound that's fun, let's take a deep dive into it. I don't know much about Azure functions to be very sure. I might be a beginner on it, and maybe you know more than that, more than me on that. But if you haven't heard about it, then I would highly recommend you watch it and share the video later on. So this is from Microsoft release note where this feature was released and it says connect to Azure Functions from AL code. The description says the developer can now connect to Azure Functions from AL. This allows an easy integration with functions that exist in Azure Functions. One scenario that Microsoft says is to move a code which where you're using a .NET interop component into an Azure function and that then get called from AL. There are various use cases of it when you start reading about what is possible with the Azure functions and all. So if you know, and we'll try it how it works, maybe you'll find a situation where you can use it. The feature detail says that Microsoft have added something new in the system module where developers can now connect to Azure functions. And by using the new modules, AL developers can now do authentication to a function, issue a GET request with the specifying a dictionary of query parameter for the request and they get the response. Great. Issue a post request specifying the body of the request message and its content type and get the response from that function. So let's play around with it and let's see what's there. So before we get into Azure, let's open VS Code and I already have opened my system application and then in there you will see a folder called as your application and let me zoom this in. This folder or this app more or less have some things get added. One is Azure Functions, which will have which provide functionality to connect to Azure Functions with some methods, send GET request, which requires a parameter of authentication, which is an interface, and a query dictionary where you can pass parameters, and then instance of Azure Functions response. Okay, and then there is a post. So let's try playing with it, and we'll understand. Maybe we'll do a send today, and then we'll see what's possible. So I'll keep this as it is, so that we can come back and refer this if we are trying it for the first time. So let's do that. Let's create a new repo or project, and we'll call Azure Function Demo. Okay, let's choose the target platform. It should automatically connect to my sandbox because I think I have my credential cache to it. And then it'll download the symbol. In the meantime, while this process is happening, let's go to our Azure portal, which is here, and let's try to create an Azure function and see what it takes. So we'll do a create resource and we'll run search for function. Oh, there's the function app. Let's choose that. The function app. Let's try to create a new one. And we will call it, I'll have these parameter set already because I'm utilizing it for something else. This is our trial BC function. Then you can either directly publish a code or even write a code, and we'll see that what that means. And then you can also have a Docker container, which I don't know much what it is. The cool part is then you can choose the programming language that you want to build it on, and then the version of that programming language, and then where your app will be deployed in Microsoft Work Centers. Operating system, let's see what else is there. Hosting, I'm using this, networking, keeping everything open. I'll delete it. Application side, it's a new service from Microsoft, and not a new service. It's a service from Microsoft. It kind of keeps a checkup of your app that you have, and it's also applicable to the center. So maybe someday we'll talk about it. Deployment, that's okay. Tags, that's okay. You will create, and it'll create it. Now, while it is creating it, you need to remember certain things about it. When you create a function app, as we are creating it right now, it's not a function. It's a collection of functions. So a function app can have one or more functions which are doing different things, as as it's a collection of all the different functions that you can create in that library. So consider an Azure function as a library of functions where there can be one or multiple functions as per your business need and how you're grouping them. So while this deployment is happening, let's go back and go back to our VS Code and see what's happening there. Okay, everything got downloaded. Let's reload, and we are here. Now let's not be pretty uh, as we are trying this out. Let's do something here only. So what we saw in our system application, that there's a code unit for Azure Functions. So let's try to do something over there, and let's create a variable for, let's say, ABC. I'll write it correctly. Code unit, and then Azure Functions. Let's call it Azure Functions, which will allow us to interact with our Azure Functions. And then let's try to utilize this. And then we are going to do a send get request. Now, send get request have certain parameters. The first parameter is an Azure function authentication, which is a variable of type interface here. Let's copy this and create it here. So this, and let's use this as it is. The second parameter is a query dictionary of text and text, which we will use to give inputs to our Azure functions. I'm just copying it as it is. I don't know much about it. And that's it. And then it returns a code unit as your function response. So it doesn't return you a variable, it returns you a code unit, which AL function can do. So if you don't know about it, put it on comments and we'll talk about it someday. So let's do a Azure function response. Okay, and just to keep it in sync, let's place it here. Okay, so this method will return me this. So let's do this. And in that case, it says give me the other parameter, which is my query dictionary. Let's utilize that. We'll set these as we go through. So it's compiling right now. No problems at this point. But this is an interface, and there will be a way to kind of define this interface in some authentication. So let's go ahead and search for Azure function authentication in our system app. So there is actually a code unit called Azure function authentication code unit, which allows me to create OAuth authentication, create code authentication, and there are two methods for it. One, it creates an O authentication instance for a Azure function if you need, but just for the demo, we'll not go that complex. We will do the create code authentication, which in that case returns me uh, the create code authentication returns me the Azure function code auth code unit. Let's have a look on the other one. There's an authentication interface which then gets implemented on this. So this is the implementation of that interface. So we'll have to use the methods in this to get that set. Oh no, this is not an implementation of it. Let's see. That's your auth, that's your function authentication, code authentication, authenticate. This is being called from here. I was seeing it, but it calls the Azure function code auth. So this is the interface which gets implemented in this, and then this is then used by this code unit. It's a little bit confusing, but if you look at it, it does the set authentication parameter, where it's an endpoint and all, and then it returns you. So let's try to use this using this function authentication code unit. So let's go back and let's define this also. I'm a lazy developer, so I try to copy stuff as much as I can. And authentication. Okay. So this is my authentication code unit. Oh, the, sorry. I have auth. Let me do auth just to keep it unique. Now this will set this. So what I can do is I can call the method create code authentication. Now what create code authentication does? It returns me an interface of Azure function authentication which I have created, which I'm using here. So I'll get that parameter set based on this, and then it needs an endpoint and it needs an authentication code. So we'll come to this in a while. So I'll just, for the time being, keep it as it is, so that we can at least check what's happening, what we need. So which means somehow my Azure function will give me an endpoint that I can call, and there will be some way of authenticating that I'm the valid user, and based on that it'll give me the authentication header or authentication details about it, and then I can we'll see what the query dictionary will populate. So let's go back to our Azure, and it's got deployed. At this point you can go to the resource, which I'm going now. So this is a resource which is a function app, which means there can be one or multiple functions into it, and you can see all the functions in this from the functions here. So when I click on functions, I will see nothing because I haven't created anything yet. So let's try to create a new function, and we will call it, hmm, okay. Now there are some options which I'm not much aware about. One is VS Code, one is any editor, and one is development portal. So you can directly write into your Azure portal if you have to do it. And then there are certain templates which you can use. Now as I'm a new person on this, I'll use the HTTP trigger and see what happens. So when I choose that, I should see that this is my function name, and I'll call it demo function. And the authorization level is at the function level and create it. So right now what it'll do, it'll create a function with a kind of a hello world app that we see in Business Center, and there will be some code written which you can utilize in that case. So I come here to code and test, and I'll see that there is some code which is predefined, or a hello world sample more or less, which is already written, which is this. Now, what it does, you it's a complete dev environment where you can choose the programming language that you're writing in, and you can write your code, but then you can also test it. So I'll do a test. It's a post method that you're going to call, and my parameters in the body would be, let's say, name, business center. If I run this, if this code is correct, it'll return me some response out of it, and let's see what that looks like. So it says, hello Business Central, this HTTP trigger function has executed successfully, which is coming from here, hello name, and then this HTTP function executed successfully, where the name is the parameter that's needed for it. So now we know that the parameter that we need to pass is name. Can there be multiple? I'm pretty sure there can be, and that's the reason Business Central have kept it as a list of text and text. Remember that part. So now what we'll do is we have the function here. I'm not an expert on it as I'm saying it. So I'll go back, copy this parameter name here, and go back to our simple app. We'll come to this in a while, and I'll generate my query dictionary. And my query dictionary have an add method where I can say what is the parameter name and what is the associated value. Say sort of. Now this gets passed. Now we just have to set this part. Now here what we need is an endpoint. So my endpoint is here. When I go to my collection of app, if I look for the overview of this, I should get an endpoint here, which is this. So let's copy this. It's copied. Go back, and it needs an endpoint. So I'll pass it an endpoint. Uh-oh. Let's copy this again. Paste it. Now remember one thing here, that when you're calling this, this is your collection where all your apps are. To make sure that it reaches to your method, you first have to add the word API and then your function name. So what is our function name? Let's go ahead and see. The function name is called demo function. We'll copy this, come back here and say I'm actually calling in this collection. I would like to call this function. So that becomes my endpoint. Now the second thing is, what is your authentication code, which is a way of authenticating in the Azure world. So let's try to generate that, and I'll remove it after the video is done. So I'm a little bit confused here, but let's see if I do with the function keys here, and we'll try it out. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll figure it out the other way. When you come to the function key, you'll be able to see a key that's generated most probably to access this function. And also on the collection level, there is a key. So we'll see that. Let's click on this. Let's copy this, minimize this, and let's paste it here. This is my key, which is my second parameter here. So now if you look at it, my command or the request is more or less over. But I said generate the authentication header based on the function that I would like to call from the function collection, where you need to append the API as the static keyword here. And then this is the parameter that my function need, and then call that function with the parameters, and which will give me the response in a code unit. Now this code unit will also will have to look what is Azure function responses. because we have no clue what it is doing. So here is the response code unit. Now there are some method. One is successful, and that gives you a success code, true or false. There's a get error, which gives you an error message. Okay, set error. I don't know why this is there. Hmm. But this is being used internally. Let's see where it is. Oh, maybe somewhere else. It's internal. We can't use it. Then there is a get result as text. So I can actually get the result from my Azure function as text. If I have to. At the same time, I can do a get result as stream, which means if you are trying to do some file handling with the Azure Blob storage or anything else that you can write in the Azure function, you can actually utilize the stream to get some document back as a result. There's the HTTP response, which is the whole response that will be returned. Set HTTP response is again internal. Okay, so we have decent amount of methods available that you will need while utilizing this. Okay, so we have added this, and then what we'll do is we'll try to get the results, which is Azure functions response dot what should we get? Let's see, get result as text. Oh, the get result have text needs a variable of type text of result, which will be returned from this. Okay, so let's define this also. It's the beauty of it, and then we'll set it. But we want to be error supportive, as in we should surely do a little bit of error handling if it's there. So if it is successful, then we'll fetch the result. Otherwise, we will show an error, which is also available. Get error. Yes. So if everything goes well, we should see the result, whatever the function is calling. And if it doesn't succeed, then we'll see the error, whatever is generated from there. So let's give it a try. Let's try to publish this and see what happens. So when you publish it, it'll automatically go to the customer list page, and that should automatically start calling this because this is on the on open page of your customer list page. So let's wait for this to get published, and then we'll look at it how it looks. But the opportunities are endless what you can do with Azure Functions now, because now you understand that there's a whole area that you can utilize with other programming languages if you know, and it's pretty easy with this new enhancement from Microsoft to call that in within Business Central. Okay, so it says it's trying to make a connection. Do you allow it? Okay, let's do once. You can always do it if needed, and nothing came back. Neither the error, neither the message. Oh, but I did not show it anywhere. Sorry, I should have done error, and I'm pretty sure some people who are watching this live would be laughing that, oh, sort of, you don't know how to do this. Yes, man, I don't. So let's do this. If not, okay, because I'll have multiple statements here. Hmm. This will show the error in that case. That's it. Otherwise, I'll fetch it on the result, and then I'll do a message of my result. Sorry for the basic mistakes. I guess I'm allowed to do that sometimes. Or most of the time. You should always do mistakes, I guess. So let's wait for this to get published and we'll see how this works, because that is what the summary looks like for this. So at this point, it should again ask me, do you want to call something from an external node? You can always allow it if needed. I'm just doing once because I would like to test other things. It says, hello, Saurabh. This HTTP trigger function has executed successfully, which is similar to what happened on my Azure function. So that's simple, as in I know it's pretty simple when you're looking at it, and it's also literally simple, to be very fair. There are some key points that we need to take from this session. One, the Azure functions are a collection of functions. It's not one function. Inside an Azure function, you can have one or multiple functions that can be utilized. When you are trying to access that function in Business Central, the endpoint becomes the Azure function path plus API as the static keyword, and then the function name. And I'm pretty sure it's case sensitive. And I have this habit of writing it this way. And then you can pass your authentication into your call. Which are your best friend? Your best friends are code unit Azure function, the Azure function response, which will hold the response of your call. And then there's an authentication interface that you need to implement. For that, you will need the Azure function authentication code unit. If you have to pass parameters to your Azure function, then that happens with the dictionary data, right? And if you don't know it, put it on comment. We'll talk about it someday. And using just this simple set of code, you can call any Azure functions that you have created to fulfill your business needs that you have. So I'm super excited about the new enhancement of the product. I knew this was possible earlier, but then you had to code all this, but now it's part of the base. So it makes it more easier. So hopefully you like the content. Do share the video. If you haven't, then please subscribe to the channel and press that bell icon so that you kind of don't miss out on updates that are happening on this channel. And then I'll see you next time. This is Saurabh Yani signing off. See you next time.